Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan from the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and today we have another of our interviews with the management of junior mining companies. In this case, it's one of my sponsors, Masivo Silver Corp, and we're going to talk about. We're going to open with. I think we're in a situation with the banking crisis and the Federal Reserve action, and that are really putting us in a position where we're going to have a rising tide lifts all boats kind of a market. And in that kind of an environment, you want to be looking for companies that can outperform their peers. And I want to, we'll open with that, then we'll get into the argument of why they got some good projects. So I've got David Coburn and Brian Brewer. David's the CEO of the company, and Brian's the geological brains of the company. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Allan. Good to see you again and have the team on the.
David, why don't we start with, what do you think about the gold market, silver market, what's happening in the world right now? I think it's a perfect storm for gold and silver.
Yeah, no, I think so also, Allan. It's funny, I've had some good conversations this week with lots of key leaders in the banking community in the US, and just trying to pick their brain on what's happening up in Silicon Valley and with the smaller regional banks. And I think this whole thing is going to, the banking system, I believe, is on good in North America. It's on good footing, and I think in general this thing will turn around here very quickly. And as we're seeing in precious metals, they are starting to gain a lot of traction also. So yeah, I think the timing and the perfect storm is all coming together, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it right now as we speak in real time. So I agree with you on that. I think we've got a perfect storm happening right now and coming.
Now, do you think, like I do, that addressing the problem, which is that, we went through about 14 years of near zero interest rates, and then they ratcheted it up to 5%. And meanwhile, these bankers are sitting on, what they thought were fairly safe assets in mortgage-backed securities and long-dated bonds. I believe that the Fed has to at least stop raising interest rates, or even later in the year think about lowering them, which I think could take some pressure off the banks and take pressure off the US dollar and put the gold into a higher valuation.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money, and I think we've seen that with gold the past 2 to 3 weeks anyway, moving up and continuing to move up, and I think we're going to see more of that, and I think it puts some of the good juniors out there in a pretty good spot.
Now let's talk specifically about Masivo. By the way, I like the name. I live here in Mexico, and for those that don't know, Masivo means massive in Spanish, so I like that name a lot. But let's look at the fundamentals of the company, your share structure, your people involved, and then we'll get in with Brian to talk about the projects.
Yeah, we've got, by design, this past year we've rolled the company back, and we're very, very, very tight now. We have just under 22 million shares outstanding, and those are all in very good hands, from Eric Sprott, being a large shareholder, from Ernesto Echevarria there in Mexico, Mexican billionaire, to another very strong group out of Calgary that was heavily involved with Great Bear, which has been a major win. We've got another real strong group out of Toronto, and we've got some strong shareholders out of Vancouver. And I'd say out of the 22 million shares outstanding, that is the majority of it. The large majority of it is in very, very, very good, tight hands. And there's some good, there's some good points to that. And I think our shareholders are here for the long term. Or the shareholders that I just mentioned, they realize that we have a very good project in Nevada. Never mind what we have, the great stuff we have going on in Mexico, but trying to focus on Nevada right now, because that's the project that we've really all looked at in depth. All of us, everybody that I've named on that's a shareholder, is I've gone into great depth with it. And our shareholders liked that it had very high grade production pre-World War II, that the mine was shut down pre-World War II because of the war. And here we are now. We've put a real strong exploration team together to put some holes in some key areas and try to, and I'll let Brian Brewer get into this, but from the gentlemen, our board members that have designed this program, Eric and Tom Quigley, to Brian really digging in and taking a look at it and having great guidance on where to drill. We've got a fabulous project here with a market cap under $3 million. And I think that's not, people don't see this market cap under 3 million. They look at the share price instead of the market cap. And I think that is going to change very, very quickly. I'm back out to Toronto and Montreal next week, talking to some of our current shareholders, and then into Calgary to talk to some of our current shareholders. I mean, we have a market cap under 3 million. It's without being promotional, that's crazy compared to some of the companies that have assets. That
Actually, David, it's kind of an argument that I've been making a lot lately, is that I think that investors that want to protect their money should be in gold and silver.
Totally, 100%.
And those that want to see their money grow should be looking at the gold and silver stocks because of what you just mentioned. They are trading at record lows right now. And if I'm right that we've got a wave of generalist investors coming into this space, those generalists, their buying power would just overwhelm a lot of juniors. And I put you guys into that category.
Yeah, that's and very much the consensus down here in the USA, where I live and spend majority of my time. We're hearing a lot of that down here on the news channels, especially the CNBCs and the Fox Business News. We're seeing a lot of talk of getting into the Canadian mining market. So I think you talked earlier about the perfect storm. I think we're going to see all of that happen for all of our colleagues out there, not just Masivo. There's some other good companies out there that are undervalued, and I think as you say, the ships will rise with the tide here shortly.
Now, when I'm looking at any company, one of the key things that I look at is the people involved. And I don't think that, I think that's not being reflected very well in your share price, because you've got two of the key people that were responsible for the success of Mindfinders involved with your company, and they're both rock guys.
Yeah, they're both great rock guys, and they're both very familiar with Nevada, where we are, and Mexico, where we are also. So I'm very fortunate to have Brian Brewer and Mark Bailey on the team, and we're lucky to have some great guidance, some great technical geo guidance. So very happy to have them both.
Well, let's bring Brian in, because like our first interview, I was really impressed, Brian, because not only did you give us a good understanding of what Masivo is doing, but I don't know if you meant it, but to do that, but you also helped my audience understand how a geologist or a rock guy goes about exploration. And I think that that's very good information for my audience. And I was really happy to have you on and help out my audience, because I think that it was instructive on how they should look at their investments in exploration companies. So thank you very much for that, Brian.
Well, no, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know if that was my intention or not, but um, I'm glad to hear you say that. Thank you. Um, so as you know, we've completed 2 drill holes. We've received the assays from one of the drill holes, and I'm very happy with them. To start off with, we drilled 2 holes in what we call the Boston Mine area, which is actually on the patented property, i.e. the private property part of the property. Um, we drilled 55 feet. Now that's drilled width, 55 feet of almost 1 ounce silver, 1.5 grams gold, and 0.99% copper. So for initial results, that's fantastic. The second hole, and there's some other results on that have very similar to that. On that same hole, we have another 5 feet of half-ounce silver and 2.66 grams gold further down the holes.
Now
Again,
on that first hole, you were kind of trying to do a couple of things. You guys felt that based on the mineralization, that the past drilling that happened after the World War II mining was probably going in at the wrong angle. And also you wanted to determine if the mineralization continues under the old workings. So it was a success in that regard. Nothing wrong with 1% copper.
no, absolutely not. And you're correct. So when I go into a a project, and like you said, there's a small operation or small mine consisting of a 90-foot, or excuse me, 190-foot shaft, and then 2 levels, one at 90 feet, and then a one at 300 feet. That were mined, like you said, pre-World War II. The property was dropped, as a lot of properties were during World War II. And this one really sat idle until the late 1980s and early 1990s. And there was a couple companies came in, drilled a few drill holes, and then the hole that we just drilled is the first hole that's been drilled there in over 30 years. Okay. So when I come into a property, I look at it as kind of doing a step approach. I want to go from what we think and try to prove that, and put that into the now we know category. And then we just continue to build on, okay, we know that this mineralization is here, or we think it is based off of historic reports, but let's prove it. And then we can take a stair-step approach, if you will, of building on that, setting up a good foundation, building on that knowledge, and using it to come up with more hypotheses that we can prove, and just continue to build on a good solid base. Um, just like a house, if you don't have a good foundation, it's going to fall down. Um, and I'm not trying to be oversimplistic, but this is my approach. Is we do have some more regional geophysical targets that we will be drilling, and we'll probably be drilling those on the next round of next phase of drilling. I don't know if your viewers remember or not, but it's snowing right out now, right outside my window. So we drilled a couple holes, took a little bit of a break due to the snow, and we're getting ready to start back drilling here pretty soon. So we do have some other drill targets that we will be testing, but to start off with, I think it was very important for us from a technical standpoint to design these drill holes to test our hypotheses and our geologic model and our geological understanding, to make sure that we were heading in the right direction. And I think these first results indicate, yes, we are heading in the right direction. What we thought, what we were expecting to find is what we found. So I'm real happy with that. And all that's going to do is give us more information to help us guide, to help guide us through the continued success. So,
Because really,
um,
that's the foundation. You don't just poke a hole in the ground and all of a sudden find a mine. You've got to go about this in a systematic method, and that's because now you've got more information about what's happening underneath that historical work that was done, not just the mining, but also the past drilling. So that gives you the ability to vector in where to go next.
absolutely, absolutely. So, again, it's a situation where we have some historic data, and we have the stuff that was pre-World War II, the production that indicates that they've found veins reportedly that were over 1% silver. And then, other reports where they're coming up with mining stuff that was announced gold and up to 32% copper. I mean, those are,
Off the
huge numbers.
charts.
And again, I mean, those are narrow veins, obviously.
But
But
the big picture is that had to come from somewhere deeper. And
exactly.
now you got to vector in to find that somewhere deeper.
Yes, exactly. And you need to understand those small structures. You need to understand those grades. You need to understand whether or not those numbers are real. Okay. Um, so those numbers that I just stated, that's reported pre-World War II numbers. Excuse me. And then, there was some drilling that was done in the late 1980s, real early 1990s, where again, they had some great numbers. Um, their drill results, they had 5 feet of almost 1 ounce gold in a drill hole, almost 2 ounce silver, and up to almost 4% copper. So
Wow.
these are great, over 5 feet. So these are great numbers. Okay. But again, they were not done by us. Um, they're done by legitimate companies that were doing exploration. But again, we want to prove that those numbers are real to help guide us into vectoring in where do we need to be looking to find the pump system for these high grade veins that we're seeing. Okay. Um, we're also trying to follow up on some historic rock chip sampling. So again, in the late 1980s, early 1990s, geologists for two different companies, two different programs, they accessed the old mine workings.
Okay.
Now they were only able to get to the first level, which is I believe 90 feet down, or yeah, the 90-foot level. So you got a shaft that went down 190. They went down 90, and then they went out into the drifts. But when they were sampling those, they took a sample that was 3 feet long, a 3 foot wide sample, that was over 29 grams gold and 169 grams silver. So that's almost 1 ounce gold and almost 5 ounce silver and 3.9% copper. Okay. Another sample that was 4 feet long was nine grams gold and 71 grams gold, or excuse me, grams silver. So these are big numbers. Okay.
Huge.
Um, So what we want to do is we want to be able to test those and say, yes, these numbers are real. Okay. But not only are they real, we have these numbers up here that were sampled. We're not going to come in there and try to duplicate that. For the best bang for the buck is we have these numbers up here. Let's drill down here. And what we're doing is not only confirming these numbers, but we're also testing the geology in between what's known and what we think. Okay. So we've done a 3D model based off of the historic drilling. When I say historic drilling, again, I'm talking 1980s, 1990s, and then also the geologic mapping and sampling that's been done in the old workings. And so we've put that together and we've come up with some good hypotheses that, hey, the mineralization, you know, we know it's here, let's test it down here, which is what we've done. And then we're going to use that information and expand and build upon that and just keep going further and further out away from um, the Boston mine proper.
One thing
Okay.
that stands out to me is that it's clearly a high-grade mineralizing system. What kind of
Yes.
system do you think that could be, Brian? Do you have an idea yet, or still too early?
We're still working on it. What we're seeing is definitely a skarn type deposit.
Okay,
Okay. Um, but it's so early stage right now. As far we know, there's mineralization, and a lot of these properties. There's a project here, and I'm not going to mention any names, but very close to where I'm sitting here. It had 350 holes and almost 1 million ounces of gold in it, under one geologic model. Another company comes in later on, they drill another 100 and some holes. The geologic model completely changes. Okay. Their understanding changes. Um, and they have increased that project substantially. So, again, I guess the point is I'm trying to make here is definitely a high grade gold, silver, copper system. Right now, all indications are that it is a skarn deposit. What is driving that mineralization? What's driving those fluids? There's probably a porphyry down there somewhere. Where do we
or a
find it? How do we
CRD,
find it? Excuse me?
or a CRD maybe?
Could be. Absolutely. So there's
And by the way, if there is a porphyry under there, when you get the gold and copper, those porphyries associated with that kind of mineralization tend to be high-grade porphyries.
potentially, absolutely. And again, so when I go onto a property or get involved with a project, I I try to go in there with a very open mind and not with blinders on.
Right.
Because if I have
Clean
blinders
slate,
on,
like
excuse me.
like you're painting a picture.
Exactly. I want to say, okay, I keep an open mind of this is what we know. How do we expand on it? If I go into it and say, okay, I'm only focused on this little aspect of it, I might be missing the big elephant in the room. Okay, so I got to go in there with a pretty open mind. But we need to do things at the same time, technically proper. We only have so much money, and we need to put it in the ground. And we want to get the best bang for our buck. And in order to do that, we want to test again what we think, prove what we know, and um, come up with new ideas, new discoveries. And those new ideas, those new discoveries, they're going to be found by building on what we know. Okay.
And
I
that's
mean,
that's what you guys did at Mindfinders, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's easy to just take a dart and throw it in the mountain or on a map and say, well, let's drill there. Maybe you'll hit something and maybe you won't. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to um, build a good, solid database, a good, solid project based off of good, solid knowledge and data, and geologic knowledge.
Well, and
And
that's, I bring up Mindfinders because I followed the company really closely. I actually worked in the same building in the 1990s that Mindfinders was in Vancouver. So, and I was friends with the IR person, and I would often talk to Mark as well. And I remember it took a little while for you guys to be an overnight success story.
oh yeah, and there's a lot of boot leather on the ground and pounding on rocks that happened before, like you said, the overnight success story. Mindfinders was a perfect example of a great group of guys, great geologic knowledge, great property. And, you started out, I remember my first trip there, was a two-man pup tent. Look what it turned into. Um, so again, it started out as a fairly small project, and it was built by taking these incremental steps that were taken prudently based off of knowledge that was learned the day before. And that's what we're trying to do here. We do have some more, if you'll say, regional geophysical targets, and we will be drilling some of those. We got a couple targets in the what we call the Montgomery Tunnel area, and one of those targets is going to be a kind of a combination of uh, an IP target and also following up on some reported historic grades. So, we are going to be expanding out a little bit from the Boston mine, but we're going to do it in a technically prudent manner, if you will. Some of the drilling that was done on the Montgomery Tunnel areas, uh, again, 5 feet of 26 grams gold. So that's almost 1 ounce of gold over 5 feet with almost 2 ounces of silver and 1.8% copper. Again, a 10-foot sample, rock chip sample that was 3 grams gold, but almost 3 ounces of silver and over 3% copper.
Wow.
So we have, and there's also been reported a lot of VG, visible gold, on the surface in that area. And that's an area that we really haven't looked at very hard yet. Again, when we start drilling again, a couple of our first drill holes will be in that area, and we'll be testing some of these targets. We also have some IP anomalies in that immediate area. We're going to be testing those as well. And then again,
In a general sense, having mineralization is excellent. Having geophysics that sort of give you a guide help. Another thing that helps is the structural story, because these fluids make their way up from with the metals, make their way up from much deeper. And the conduit or path of least resistance is the cracks in the earth. How does the structural story fit into your geophysics, your historical drilling, and your historical mining?
don't know yet. But you're absolutely right. So these veins that we're seeing, or these structures, they're coming up from somewhere. As you said, you have a big pump system, and these conduits, these faults, these fissures, fractures are the conduits to these fluids that are bringing in the gold, silver, and copper. Okay. One of the things that we did is we looked at the historic drilling, which was all drilled vertically. And from what we're seeing so far, is these structures appear to be fairly vertical. And I think we talked about this briefly last time, is if you have let's say a vertical structure that's got your gold and silver in it and your copper, and you come in with the vertical drill hole, you're either, it doesn't take much to miss it. And if you do hit it, you can be drilling right down the center of that, and you can get some artificially inflated results, at least as far as drill thicknesses are concerned.
Right.
So one of the things that we're doing is we are drilling, inclined holes that allow us to not only test the down dip extensions of that mineralization, but also gives us a passing through these structures. And once you do enough of those, you can start using that in a 3D model to try to figure out how these structures are orientated.
Right.
Are they are they truly vertical? Are they, what angle are they at? What are they doing? And it's pretty early stage right now. From what we have done and the geologic model, the 3D modeling that we have put together, again, well, we've only drilled 2 holes, but by drilling those 2 holes, um, it appears that our geologic model so far is pretty accurate, which is what we want. I mean, we want to be able to prove that we're on the right track, and also use that information to help guide us into the next steps of exploration.
What really
So,
excites me a lot, Brian, is that this is at the top of the system. You're getting excellent grades, mineralization. And that all comes from something deeper. But you're as far away from the heat engine as possible, and you are getting this high grade mineralization. So that tells you something about what's potentially below that near surface work.
absolutely. And also keep in mind, so the drill holes that we've drilled so far are on what we call the Boston mine area. Okay. The next phase of drilling will be just across the canyon, an arm's throw away, but across the canyon, if you throw better than I do, in what's called the Montgomery Tunnels area. Okay. So these are all on the eastern end of our claim block. But this mineralization, we can trace it on surface for about 4 miles.
Wow.
Okay. So about 4 miles away from our drilling, again, contained on our claim block, 4 miles away is what we call the Western Skarn area. As far as I know, no drilling has been completed in there. But we've seen some excellent surface samples collected in that area. We have excellent mineralization in that area. So I guess
Alteration as well.
alteration, we're seeing high grade gold, silver, copper on surface, and there's some little prospect pits in there as well. But that's 4 miles away from where we're drilling now. So where is that? We'll say that heat engine, that pump that's driving all these.
But that evidence you've got suggests that that's a big, powerful pump.
Exactly. And and it is telling us that there's a big system there. Are we sitting right on top of it where we're drilling now, or are we hitting kind of the fringes of it, and the best stuff is yet to be seen on another part of our property? We
Wow,
don't know yet.
that's
That's
this is what you're explaining there. Thorough exploration, investigation of past mineralization, but lots of evidence that you're looking at a very big and powerful high grade mineralizing system, and that's what the treasure hunting is all about.
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, that's why I got into this business. I mean, it's um, you're a treasure hunter in a sense, and the thrill of the chase, if you will. Um, but again, what we're using the information that we're finding out now. Maybe, I mean, we're hitting some great stuff, but maybe the best stuff is over here on another part of our property.
Right, right, right,
So, I
right.
mean, even though we're seeing some great results, um, maybe we're not, maybe we haven't dialed into exactly where, uh, the
You
the mother
know,
load, so to speak, is, and
and
that's
what you're explaining there is very similar to what another sponsor of mine, which is called I-80 Gold, is doing near Eureka, Nevada.
yep,
They went into a place where there was historical mining in an open pit. There was a wall failure and the mining was stopped. Then they looked at all the data around it and they saw, you can actually see alteration of a skarn right in the side of the pit. So they knew there was probably a skarn there. And then on the other side of the pit, they started drilling and they found a gold deposit. High grade, thick intersections right at the edge of the pit.
right,
So then they went to the south of the pit and they found a massive grade of CRD that not only did it have your gold, your silver, lead, and zinc, but it also had an overprint of high grade gold. And as you're describing this gives me a feeling like the early days of them just looking at some old information and saying, well, gosh, there should be something here. They poke a hole, they hit a CRD. They poke a
mhm.
hole over here, they hit a gold deposit. They poke a hole not very far from the CRD, they find a skarn. But all the information was suggesting that there was a big, powerful mineralizing system. And it sounds to me like you could be looking at something similar.
Exactly. I mean, again, we're in the early stages. I mean, we've drilled 2 drill holes. We've had great results on our first one. The results from the second hole are pending, and once we get those back, I'm sure we'll let everybody know how those are. But it's um, if we already knew that, hey, this is the mine, here it is, it's not getting any bigger, this is what it is, here's a little deposit, there's no upside potential. But we're at the early stages now where, I mean, every time we do something, it's an exciting discovery, if
Development.
you will.
Yeah.
And that's just going to keep building our knowledge base to help guide us into where we really need to be looking.
That's a great description, Brian. I have a lot of confidence in what you're doing, partially because of all the evidence, but the systematic and intelligent way you're going about building a building.
Well, and you have to do that. I've heard, in the last 30 years, I've heard before, the best way to kill a project is to drill it. Well, the best way to kill a project is to drill it blindly without having uh, the foundation and the knowledge to be able to put a drill hole out there um, with a pretty good chance of success. If you just throw a dart on a map and drill a hole, you're wasting money. We need to be systematic about it. We need to be, um, I don't know if technologically, we need to be technically driven. Everything we need to do needs to be based off of sound, scientific, um, you know,
Method.
practices that are going to make sense to help guide our program and give us the results that we need. So the investors and the shareholders
Are
you know,
rewarded.
are rewarded based off of good work.
I used to hear people say that, you know, practice makes perfect. And if you're doing it wrong, practice is not making you perfect.
I've always said that. So one of the most famous basketball coaches in the country was John Wooden. And
Yep.
I believe he coached for UCLA. And when I was in junior high, he told me that. He said, practice does not make perfect. He goes, practice makes persistence. He goes, perfect practice makes perfect. You practice doing something wrong, you're going to get really good at doing it wrong.
You got
But
it.
if you practice doing it correctly, that's what's going to make it perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Well, and you've done it before, and I have confidence you guys got something real good here, and you're going to do it right, Brian. And I really appreciate that. I know we're running close on time. I better get back to David. David, did you have some closing comments?
I mean, my closing comments are just, you know, we've got a great project, and as Brian has said, we've got the results of one hole. We expect these 10 holes to give us some very good insight on where we're going to take this, and soon to be developing a much larger drill program. Our market cap's under 3 million. We've got some of the best investors in the world on our team, from Eric Sprott to Ernesto Chavarria to a strong group out of Calgary. I'll be visiting with all of those and all that whole group here in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. And we're going to do some great things with this project. We're all in it.
Say hi to those guys in Calgary for me, because they probably don't know this, but I was part of the team at Great Bear in the early days. And
cool.
I'm the guy who brought Bob Singh in, that really led to the success of Great Bear. Bob Singh and I had worked together for about a decade, and I'm pretty good at spotting talented geological people and methods. And I get that same kind of feeling out of Brian and your team.
Well, that group out of Calgary owns just over 40% of the company in shares, and they're a real strong investment group, and very loyal, and are big believers in this project. So as are everybody that I've mentioned. So we've got a good team. It's a very tightly held stock, and we're at very low market cap right now.
So it sounds like not just from a corporate sense or from a technical sense on how to do exploration, you've also got the corporation set up in a way for success.
We really do. Yeah, we're really happy with what we've done and where we're at right now. I see big things and big valuations coming soon.
Let me close it off, guys, and thank you very much for your time again. It's been a good chat, and I have a lot of confidence we're going to have more to talk about in the not too distant future.
Great stuff, Allan. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much,
Brian. I really appreciate your time. You're my kind of guy. There's not a lot of fluff, and you're building a foundation for success, and you're going about it in the exact right way. And I think it's going to lead you to a lot more success.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As always, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, so there you go, folks. In Masivo Silver, I think you've got a heck of a story. You've got corporation set up for success with a small share structure and very well tightly held. You got a company with a project that looks exceptional. And you've got a team of guys that have done the success story of finding something from early days to building it into an overnight success. And I think that that's where Masivo Silver is headed. On that note, have a great day. But my shows are for information purposes only. Speak with your financial advisor before making any investment decision, and do your homework. Check out the company, and I think you'll like what you see. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.